Good evening. I would like to call to order the school committee meeting of March 11th, 2015. Our first item of business is roll call, and everyone is present, Kim. Thank you. Our second order of business, we're going to interrupt for a minute because we have some special visitors tonight. So I'd like to ask that they stand up and introduce themselves, what Boy Scout troop they're with, and what they're doing here, because we are thrilled to have them. So do you want to start here with Nick and go this way? Oh, we'll start with Jared. Okay.
My name is Jared Benoit. I'm with Troop 56. I have to be here for the citizenship merit badge.
I'm Nick Song. I'm from Troop 56 as well, and I'm here for the citizenship merit badge. You can do it anyways, Tommy.
Tommy's actually here to see his sister.
Coming to see that? All right. Good thing we're doing it right up front, so you won't have to go before you've seen it. Excellent. Well, thank you. And we've had a series of Boy Scouts come for their badge, and we're very pleased to have them. So thank you, and hope you enjoy yourselves. Our next item of business would be the consent agenda. There are 7 items for consideration. The first 3 we could all take as a group. The approval of the minutes February 25th, 2015, March 3rd, 2015, and warrants G407, R211, L23, L24, L25, and L26. I would entertain a motion to approve those. Mrs. Bonish.
I entertain a motion, I make a motion to approve those 3 that.
Great, thank you.
as read.
Second, Mrs. Broussard. Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous, Kim, thank you. Payroll warrant 225, 2015. Mr. Mueller.
Motion to approve payroll warrant 225, 2015.
Okay, do we have a second? Mrs. Burns. Okay, all those in favor? 5 in favor, Kim, 2 abstain, Mrs. Carroll and Mrs. Kane. Warrants CB06, Mrs. Broussard.
I'll make a motion to approve warrant CB06.
And Mr. Bjork. Thank you. All those in favor? 6 in favor, 1 abstain, Mrs. Burns. Thank you. Warrants SPED 10, SPED 11, Mrs. Bonish.
I'll make a motion to approve warrants SPED 10, SPED 11.
Okay, and do we have a second? Mrs. Broussard. All those in favor? Okay, 6 and 1 abstain, Mrs. Burns. And our final one, warrants FS 11. Mr. Bjork.
I move to approve warrant FS 11.
Okay, second, Mrs. Burns. All those in favor? 6 in favor and 1 abstain would be Mrs. Carroll. Okay, thank you. Good. Our next item of business is our student representative report. And we have Stephen.
So the annual WHS Talent Show will be held on Friday, March 20th at the middle school. And there will be the English Language Arts MCAS from March 24th to March 26th for the sophomores at WHS. And also the Sprinkling Dance will be on Friday, March 27th, and it will be the first school dance in the new high school.
Wow. Is it in the cafeteria? Where is it? In the
Gym.
Oh, the gym, yeah. The gym.
Mr. Harrison has already told them that they have to remove their shoes before.
Oh, excellent.
An old-fashioned sock hop.
You think it's big enough to fit you all into it?
I think so, yeah.
Do you have any questions? Great, thank you. Thank you very much,
Thank
Steve.
you.
Okay. We are going to take matters out of turn because we have some people doing a presentation. So we're going to go to, let me see, what are we under? School wellness.
Yes.
Under number 6B, the new business school wellness advisory council presentation. And I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Yes, I want to thank Mrs. Crow and Mrs. Stinson for being here on behalf of the School Wellness Advisory Council. I know they have students with them as well. I'm sure they'll probably, well, you know Stephen, obviously, and was Christine, correct?
Christina Hawks.
And they have a presentation for you on the work that the School Wellness Advisory Council has been doing this past year.
Well, first, we want to say thank you for having us here tonight. We provided you with a couple of handouts, and I just want to recognize Shelley Newhouse in the audience as well. And Mrs. Lois Nato could not be here with us tonight. I think she's at the dodgeball game.
Oh, yes, that's correct, at the middle school gymnasium. They are doing a high school Wilmington, yes, activity. Staff versus the students.
So the first handout we gave you has a description of the School Wellness Advisory Council on it. We used to be called School Health Advisory Council / School Wellness Committee, and it was too long, so we shortened it to SWAC. And so listed on the sheet, you have our goals for this school year. And so we still have the two committees, and it's all the same people that serve on both committees. And a couple of members are here. Kate is here. So under School Health Advisory, that's where the Essential School Health Services grant falls. And so we discuss the school health grant goals, which have to do with the scope of services of the grant. And then physical education and health is where we would discuss the health curriculum.
And with regards to the physical education and health component of the School Wellness Advisory Council, a lot of what we had a conversation over the past year is with regards to the district-determined measures that are happening both in physical education as well as in the health education program. And I was fortunate to be a recipient this past December from the School Business Partnership Award grant, where I have been able to purchase stability balls for the Woburn Street School Health Classroom. And then I also then in turn tried to open and expand that scope to the Education Foundation, Wilmington Education Foundation, the curriculum grants, and I was awarded a partial for that, so I'm hoping to expand the stability balls into another health classroom across the town, hopefully by the end of the school year. I've just currently received the Woburn Street shipment, so we'll actively get that moving in the next few weeks. And then on to the school wellness piece of our advisory council. This year, one of the goals that is stated that you can certainly have read was implementing a youth risk behavior survey with our students in grades 7 through 11. So we're working with a consultant to make that process happen, as well as the Department of Education. We've done multiple school wellness programs throughout the district, many of which have included and are currently including the recess before lunch. At the north and the west, at the west, there's been walking programs. At the north, we've been fortunate to have our nurse, Mrs. Ferrara, do the Physically Fit Fridays. She's expanded this year to include cardio fitness in the classroom. So those are some really great activities. And then, of course, we've a couple of years ago, we started the pedometer on the Move program, where when we implemented that, we actually had 130 staff throughout the district participating, and we're again done that for the 2 or 3 consecutive years from that. And I know at the town hall they've done the soup and the cook-off chili thing for the whole community. And then I'd like to turn it over now to Stephen and Christina, who are going to share out the student and staff component for another part of our program that we're currently working on. Okay.
So first off, we have some facts for you. So according to the American Heart Association, sudden cardiac arrest affects 350,000 Americans each year. The heart stops beating abruptly and the victim is unconscious with no pulse. The most common cause is a lethal abnormal heart rhythm called ventricular fibrillation. The only treatment is early defibrillation by electric shock. In 1990, the American Heart Association developed a chain of survival. This protocol addresses the fact that most sudden cardiac arrest episodes occur outside of a hospital, with death occurring within minutes of onset. With each minute that passes, the likelihood of survival decreases by 7 to 10%. To provide the best opportunity for survival, each of these 4 links on the chain must be put into motion within the first few minutes of sudden cardiac arrest onset.
Automated external defibrillators are available to the general public in several places such as gyms, schools, and stadiums. Wilmington Public Schools and the Wilmington Board of Health collaborated on the Heart Safe Community Project. and AEDs were placed in all of our schools and other public buildings in the town of Wilmington.
A component of the AED program is providing CPR training to school personnel. For sustainability reasons, some of the school nurses became CPR instructors. CPR is now offered through the Professional Development Department via Wilmington University. A few years later, Mrs. Nardo, one of our school health PE teachers, became a CPR instructor, and she piloted the first student CPR class at WHS. Simultaneously, student CPR classes were also offered on Saturday mornings. Both were very well received by students, and the need became apparent that more students were interested in learning CPR. The next step in the process involved submitting a mini-grant application. Thanks to the generosity of a mini-grant from Community Health Network Area 15, the rest of the high school health and PE teachers became CPR instructors, and more CPR mannequins and CPR supplies were purchased. CPR was then added to the grade 10 health curriculum.
Here is a picture of a small group of students taking a CPR class on a Saturday morning. And these students are now graduated from Wilmington High School.
And then there were many positive outcomes from the Heart Safe Community Project, and Mrs. Crow believes that high school grade 10 students benefited the most from the Heart Safe Community Project. The most important lesson they have learned in becoming CPR certified is the importance of giving back to the community and becoming an active participant in the chain of survival.
High school teachers and Mrs. Travis, the Western Intermediate School nurse, provided a CPR class for the staff through Professional Development Department. This was an afternoon class offered by Wilmington University, and CPR classes are available twice a year for the staff.
And then up on the slide, we have a quote from WHS alumni Kay Cowden, and she said that taking CPR in health class will be helpful to me because I volunteer and work with young children in the community. I'll feel more confident being around them and being certified in CPR. And also, for me personally, taking CPR in health class was a really great experience because I learned life-saving things that I really didn't have any idea of before, and I would not have known what to do in a situation that required these techniques. And I agree with Kate that I am more confident if something were to happen.
Yeah, I also took the CPR class, and I believe it's very helpful and something that just everyone should know in case there is an emergency. This is another staff CPR class in the old Wilmington High School library. Staff from multiple schools, the middle school, Shashi, and Woburn Street participated in this class.
And then up on there again, we have a quote from Mrs. Nardo. She said, "I'm very happy that my students know CPR and could potentially help someone in the future." And taking her class, I am also very happy that I have the ability to potentially save someone in the future if something were to happen.
This is a picture of some high school sophomores taking a CPR class in Ms. Nardo's class, and students are demonstrating the proper CPR technique with CPR mannequins.
And the school district mission statement captures the essence of the AED CPR program. The first Heart Safe program began in the state of Massachusetts in 2002, and now it exists in 15 other states. Qualifying communities have to comply with specific criteria in order to apply. Criteria includes having AED devices in several public places and businesses and CPR-trained employees. Shelley Newhouse, Director of Wilmington Board of Health, submitted our application, and the town of Wilmington was designated as a heart-safe community last fall. We also want to mention new legislation called Michael's Law. It was recently enacted in Massachusetts, requiring all school districts to develop medical emergency plans. This went into effect after the death of a Sutton High School student from sudden cardiac arrest. The school district AED program is a component of the medical emergency plan.
We are very proud to be a heart-safe community. The Heart Safe Community Project would not have been possible without the support of all those listed there. As a designated heart-safe community, 2 signs are posted in town, just like the picture in the top left-hand corner. You can see when you cross the town line that we are a heart-safe community. That's it.
So that's our presentation. Shelley, do you want to add anything?
No, I give most of the credit to Laura, and she did a wonderful job.
Great teams. Any questions?
Do we have the new high school outfitted?
We do. We made sure they all moved over.
Excellent.
Yep.
I will say, I've always told people, your meeting, when I used to go to it, I was the assigned person from the school committee when it first started up. They were the most productive meetings I ever attended. You have a really good way of getting everything together and doing it and getting your work done and still having a great time while you were doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're still the same because you have so much that you're doing. Mrs. Burns and then Mr. Bianco.
Wondering, the compression, are you teaching the kids Staying Alive, that old Bee Gees song?
Yeah.
What is the, well, I thought that was, why didn't we think of it earlier? Now, can you just explain what without going into all the detail, I learned it where you blew first and then you started compressions, or what's the new theory with CPR now?
Well, it used to be ABC, airway, breathing, compression. Now it's backwards, CAB. So compression first, then airway, then breathing. Yeah. Sounds like you need to refresh your class.
It's been about 15 years, 20 years. Don't date me now.
How many students have participated in this, roughly?
Let me think, I'm trying to think. Last year would have been the entire 10th grade class, student class population, so this year we'll have, again, the 10th graders currently, they will be taking place, or participating the end of May, June. That'll be when they'll have their intensive course training. So with last year being the full year of implementation, the entire sophomore class, and again, so I don't know the exact numbers of last year's sophomore class, but that's how it's been going.
With the whole
So,
class, that's
yes,
terrific.
so it would be all 10th graders.
That's great.
Yes.
Quick question,
Oh, yes, Mr. Miller, sorry.
are most teachers certified CPR? Do we have a percentage of the number of teachers that are certified?
Do you know? There's a list of CPR trained staff in all of the buildings.
I think
There's some in every school.
And I think there's a good percentage amongst most of the schools. I'm trying to think, I don't have an exact number, but in my building, I would say about 8 or 10 of us, I think, and most of them have gone through some sort of choke saving process with, regards to being on the cafeteria duty and that sort of thing. So it's certainly something but we haven't really specifically looked at the percentage of number of
Let me ask it a different way. Is there a standard of how many teachers should be certified in a school?
I think there's a small number, like there should be at least 4 to 7 in a school building. It depends on the size of the building.
I'm not sure the actual specific number that are supposed to be certified. I know as a physical education teacher, that's certainly something that comes with regards to your discipline, having CPR and first aid. So, but other than that, I'm not sure if, other classroom teachers in that regard, so.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do you have any other? Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out tonight. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you
This
for
is
having
very
us.
informative.
Christina, Stephen, thank you.
All right, our next order of business. The superintendent's report, old business. Oh, the superintendent's report.
Yes.
Different. Okay.
Just a few things to report to you. I think that you're all aware that the governor's budget was recently released, and obviously we have a long way to go before there's an actual budget. The governor's budget is just the first step of the process, still has to go through the House, go through the Senate, and then there's a conference committee as well. But I did want to bring to your attention that the governor's budget, the one area that would have somewhat of a significant impact on Wilmington Public Schools is the proposed elimination of the full-day quality kindergarten grant. If that were to take place, it would result in a reduction of $132,000 to Wilmington. That grant is used essentially to pay for the ed assistants that support full-day kindergarten within the school district. So certainly keep our eyes on it. As soon as I saw that, I sent emails off to different associations, both school business and superintendents, about advocating, obviously, for at least if there's an intent to eliminate that down the road, is that it should be phased, that we shouldn't be pulling the plug all at once. A little bit surprising given so much news and attention paid to early childhood education in general, not just in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but across the country. So stay tuned for that. We'll obviously keep on top of that. There's a CIT day on Friday folks are pretty excited, especially at the elementary level. There's going to be some training around math, so there's a lot of excitement. Other activities happening as well, but it is an early release day for students. Also, I just want to remind the committee as well as the community that tomorrow we will have our site visits for the middle school principal candidates, and there is an opportunity for parents and community members to meet the candidates and ask questions of the candidates, and that is starts at 6 o'clock in the Wilmington Middle School auditorium. So we hope that folks will be able to attend and come prepared with some questions. Also wanted to report to you that the DECA team, we have 38 students from DECA, the Wilmington DECA team, who will be competing in the state tournament, and they leave tomorrow afternoon. Their first order of business after checking into their hotel is they actually sit for an exam, and then they do their role-playing part of the DECA competition on Friday. We have about 100 students total in the DECA club, so the fact that over a third of them are competing in the state competition is pretty impressive. So I had the opportunity this morning to hear 7 of those students at the Wilmington School Business Partnership meeting, and was just absolutely floored and so completely impressed with their very articulate and passionate rationale for why DECA is so important to them, and how much it's done to build their confidence and their presentation skills and their negotiating skills. And you could definitely see that this was a group of really articulate folks who have learned some great skills from the DECA team. So we wish them luck, and we are eager to see if any of them move to nationals. Nationals are held this year in Disney World in Orlando, Florida. So
That's a good incentive.
yeah, we'll certainly be volunteering to chaperone that trip. And finally, I just wanted to let you know that for the MCAS, because there have been so many school cancellations, the DESE took the somewhat unprecedented step, I believe, of extending the window for administration of MCAS, as well as postponing by approximately a week the date, or allowing districts to postpone the administration of those exams that have prescribed dates, the grade 4 long composition, grade 7 long composition. We have elected to take advantage of that, so for all those exams that have a prescribed date, we applied to take advantage of that, so they'll be delayed a week. So just to let you know that was helpful, because we have lost, in the case of Wilmington, 5 instructional days. There are districts out there that are up in the 8 to 9 range in terms of days lost. So, and that's it for my report.
Great, excellent. Do you have any questions? All set, thank you. Our next item of business would be the superintendent's entry plan findings.
I distributed earlier this evening a revised copy. There was one slide that was missing from the original slides that were put into the packet. Don't have these PowerPoint slides up on the projector, but you have them here in front of you. So what I thought would be helpful is to just sort of step us through. We have 2 standards that we're looking to dive a little bit more deeply into this evening, and those 2 standards include leadership and governance, as well as fiscal and asset management. And I thought we would step through each strand underneath each standard. I'll just sort of hit the highlights of the findings and the opportunities for each of those strands, and then provide opportunity for question and comment, pausing after each of those strands. All right. So we start off with leadership and governance. That standard has 3 different strands, the first one being school committee. And as I reviewed, what we find is that there is a high level of commitment on behalf of the school committee to successful schools, that this committee has a very strong understanding of its roles and responsibilities and accepts those roles and responsibilities very seriously, that there is communication happens both positively and effectively, that there's a strong culture of collaboration with community officials, and that the committee is supportive of our efforts to base our decision-making on data, different types of data and evidence, and that your leadership has been guided by a comprehensive strategic plan. In terms of opportunities, wanting to provide more regular updates to the committee to be able to really build your awareness, enhance your focus, and support your efforts to advocate on behalf of the schools. Support the implementation of the superintendent evaluation process, which we're doing for the first time this year, and to review and revise the district's strategic plan, which has currently a 2012 to 2017 timeframe.
Does anyone have it at this point? Mrs. Broussard? I was just going to say that, first of all, I'm glad that we're chunking this, and even if we do 2 and 2 and 2 going forward, because it's a lot of information, and even when I sat down the first go-around to try to process my feelings and understanding and maybe prioritize in my own head, I had a hard time prioritizing, because everything's a priority when it comes to our kids. Under opportunities for the leadership and governance piece as it relates to school committee, it's quite clear to me that we need to revisit that strategic plan and really look at the big picture and establish really what the true priorities are, because I see that as the big umbrella that'll cover everything else that we do. Mm-hmm. And again, how do we determine those priorities? I'm not really sure, but it seems like we really need to focus on that first and then continue.
All right, Mrs. Burns? I actually very much like the opportunities that are listed, especially with especially in the legislative role. Sometimes I know that I start early, that it's up at the federal level and not quite at the state level yet, but could get to that level. But I too would, I think, benefit from more direction so that we, as a committee, are vocal on a lot of the issues, especially with this this new budget item with the full-day kindergarten grant. I mean, we've benefited from that grant for several years, and I think our MCAS data shows that, and I think the strength in our students and the achievements, I think all lends it to this. And where I know a lot of school committees, such as Framingham especially, are pulling for they want a pre-K grant, and although there's no way it can be funded in the near future per se, but that discussion's already taken place at the state level, which is good, and the seed is planted and, to move forward. But to even consider taking away, I can't understand why they would, or how they could take away from education in the state that we are in with the unfunded mandates that we're feeling, several years after they've been implemented still. And, and it just doesn't seem like either hand is really talking.
Mr. Bjork?
I actually was just going to say that Julie articulated my position on the strategic plan perfectly. I'm looking forward to revisiting that.
Yeah, and I just to address that for a second, at the end of March, we'll be meeting with the district leadership team specifically to talk about strategic objectives and to bounce ideas off them, to filter everything down and to try and identify those, essentially 4 is a good number, strategic objectives that, if we do a good job addressing those, should help to address a lot of the other concerns, challenges, findings, etc. So that's really the key, is to define what those strategic objectives are, and then to work as a team to identify, okay, what are the initiatives now that we need to undertake to be able to accomplish those objectives, recognizing that nothing's going to happen in a year, that a lot of these things will happen over a multi-year period.
I know, I think that's one of the things we get excited, we see these things identified, and then you're waiting for it to have happened yesterday. Mm-hmm. So we have to always keep reminding ourselves that we definitely know that this is long-term. That's what our priorities may be. Is there going to be a space in there for the priorities to change? I would think at some point, if you need them to, they will. Mm-hmm. Yes, Mrs. Burns.
Just a quick question to the superintendent. Are we going to a 3-year plan as opposed to the 5-year plan?
Yeah, that's certainly something that we can have a discussion about. There is something your last plan was 5 years, and I know, so, if we use that 5-year time frame starting in 2015, that would take us through 2020. Mm-hmm. There's something kind of visionary about that 2020 number, but that's certainly part of the, I think a lot of the things, I think 5 years might make sense, because I think a lot of the things that we are taking on will take 5 years to fully implement. That's not to say that we're not going to revisit it on a regular basis and adjust it as we either accomplish things, and so it should be a living document, not a kind of put it on the shelf and forget that it exists.
Right.
Very good, thank you.
Excellent. All right, that's great, thank you.
Sure. Moving on to the next strand, under leadership and governance, which is district and school leadership. Findings include that there is a very diverse level of experience and background in our district leadership team. It is a very strong team. They are very supportive and collegial, and they are very dedicated to their positions in their schools and their teams. They are very effective operational leaders, and certainly have different levels of development along the continuum of being strong learning leaders or instructional leaders, and working to strengthen that role for them. I think part of that, of course, is the continued use of the educator evaluation tool to be able to help define what effective administrative practices are, and to use that for professional growth and development of administrators. So some of the opportunities really are around supporting that growth and development, not just by using that evaluation instrument, but also by continuing to conduct leadership team meetings. We've done a lot of work this year in building collaboration, facilitating meetings, learning about really how to facilitate and the collaboration, the cooperation of teachers at various opportunities that they have for meeting with staff. We're also building capacity and facilitating the data-informed cycle of inquiry and improvement, supporting and modeling the use of PLCs, professional learning communities, and providing targeted professional development in specific areas, perhaps around the standards and standards-based instruction, technology, all those types of areas, providing formalized written operational guidance and streamlining administrative processes and procedures. And that's a strand that you sort of see throughout around written guidance and written policies and procedures. And I certainly don't want to lead anybody to believe that we don't have strong practices and procedures, but God forbid if one of us were to be taken out, we'd want to make sure those were documented so that other folks know exactly what those practices and procedures are.
Okay, any comment, Mrs. Bonish?
So I was going off of this other document that was the more detailed one.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, regarding the professional learning community, you say continuing efforts already underway to implement. What is already underway? I'm just curious how that works.
We started off this year as PLCs are something that I have some familiarity with based on my role and my time in my former district. What we did initially was we actually distributed a book to all the members of the district leadership team, Building Cultures That Last, and it is a book on professional learning community practices. At the same time, I have tried during the course of our meetings to model what that facilitated collaboration looks like. It really is about getting people to talk to each other and collaborate and facilitate that process, rather than having meetings be about reporting out or talking at it, but how to really work together to put the collective wisdom of the group together to be able to solve problems. And in the case of teachers collaborating, it's most of the time it's collaborating around student work, having discussions about instructional practices, instructional methods, talking about data, and really using the data to glean information for how to adjust instruction. So we've already done that. We're actually having an outside facilitator come in on April 3rd. They're going to do a training for all of our district leadership team members on PLCs. This is an organization called SRI, and they are one of the leading organizations in terms of PLC practices. And then in June, we're actually doing a 3-day training for teams of staff and administrators. So each administrator will bring a couple members from their staff, and that will allow us to start to build capacity amongst our teaching staff to be able to facilitate meetings and facilitate discussions around student work and data.
So are the professional learning communities, is that within Wilmington, or is it?
That's within Wilmington,
Okay.
exactly, yeah. And PLCs is essentially, it's not an initiative, it's an approach, it's a way, it's a practice, if you will, that you implement.
Any other questions on this, Mrs. Burns?
A quick question. With regards to, again, I'm referring to the more detailed version as well, some of the inconsistencies in implementing certain protocols and procedures. Is there a sort of, I'm not quite sure how to ask this, is there a sort of checks and balance now moving forth with regards to making sure that the policies and documentation on all those areas are being met per the policy and protocols of the district?
One of our goals for this year, a couple of goals, are around documenting those policies and procedures and providing that written guidance. And I think it's not that things are not being done, it's just that it might not be done the same way from one building to the next. And that's something we want to make sure we minimize that inconsistency.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Bjork, did you have?
You mentioned the targeted professional development for administrators and leaders. How is that accomplished? Is that, are there courses in Wilmington University, or is that outside during professional development days, or?
We try to create those opportunities. For example, April 3rd is actually Good Friday, so it's an all-day training. It worked out really well because there's no staff in the district. Schools are not open, so it provides an opportunity to get the administrators out of their building without them having to be concerned about what's happening back in the building. So we take advantage of, say, CIT time. We take advantage of time over the summer. A day like Good Friday is another example. And the targeted professional development really is focused on those things that are within the school improvement or district improvement goals, or could be some area of commonality in professional practice or student learning goals that administrators share. So that's when I say targeted, we're really focused on that professional development that they need to support their accomplishment of their goals.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other on this side? Thank you.
The third strand under leadership and governance is improvement planning processes, improvement planning practices. And what we find is that Wilmington Public Schools definitely has a strong use of data to inform district and school improvement goals. But what we find is that due to time constraints and competing priorities, we don't always spend as much time as we'd like to in monitoring those in a timely fashion and then adjusting the goals as necessary. We certainly have done some of that, but I think that we could do a better job of that and ensure that there's a consistent process. And a lot of that is around making sure that you're deliberately calendaring and scheduling those opportunities during the course of the year. I think in terms of communication, we can do more in terms of communicating what our improvement goals are, as well as what efforts we have undertaken and what progress we've made towards accomplishing those goals, not just to the school committee, but to the school community in general. And I think a finding that emerged here is that we really need to develop a clear vision and definition for what we mean by student success, one that is all-encompassing and one that clearly means that we want high expectations and challenging, rigorous experience for all students, regardless of ability level and regardless of ability or disability, that we want to make sure we have strong sort of Tier 1 instruction in place. And defining that so that we can really galvanize the commitment of all staff to that is important. With respect to opportunities, engaging district and school leaders in the same strategic visioning process that we will obviously be engaged in as well, providing support and training to improve the quality of goals and their alignment to the strategic plan, as well as to the district improvement plan and the school improvement plan, ensuring that the goal-setting process is transparent, but that there's as much participation as possible in the development of goals, particularly district and school improvement goals. Making sure that we have regular and proactive, timely communication of the goals, the actions that are taken, and the progress we've made towards accomplishing those goals. And then ensuring that we have the appropriate time and structures to support effective progress monitoring and reporting on our goals and our improvement practices.
Okay, any questions on this?
Sounds good with that.
You're all set. Mrs. Broussard.
Sure. This was another one that stuck out for me because I look at this, and we've talked about it a little bit, examining what rigor means in our whole community and what does success mean for all of our kids. It almost seems to me that we need a slight culture shift, that all of our kids, we have high expectations for, and we need to push that rigor just a little bit, that we're not okay with this level, we expect this of everyone. It's just kind of stuck out for me in that point.
One of the things, I probably should have mentioned this in my superintendent's report and didn't, but this past weekend on Saturday, I had the opportunity to attend the Federation for Children with Special Needs Conference, and there were 21 other educators and administrators from the district that attended that conference, thanks to Mike and Joe Newhouse's generous donation. And we actually had the opportunity to debrief with about half of the staff that were there afterwards. And the level of enthusiasm and excitement and support and endorsement of exactly what you're articulating, which is that, we have to start with inclusion, and if inclusion doesn't work, then we move to a sub-separate, so that all kids are receiving the same high-level instruction, rigorous instruction, with appropriate supports if they have an IEP and they need those additional services. And that group was enthusiastically endorsing that. So I think that it's there. I think that's the commitment, the support is there. We just have to give teachers the tools and the strategies to be able to implement it, and also the professional development and training around how to really address the needs of all learners in the classroom environment.
I see not only a culture shift for our administration and our district, but parents as well.
Too. Exactly.
That's a huge piece of it. Our kids can do better. We all know they can. We all have high expectations for our children. It's just getting everybody to believe that.
Mrs. Burns? I would also like to, to take off from what you've just said, the same type of rigor and expectations I have for our students, I have for our staff and administrators as well, to better themselves and their skills. And I think the findings speak to, some of the findings speak directly to that they have a rigor, an expectation that they too need to succeed to, and that status quo is not going to cut it, because we can't expect that of our students if we don't have that leadership and those teachers who themselves are developing and learning going forth, because education has changed drastically in the couple past decades, and I would expect the same for those leaderships positions as well. Excuse me for interrupting.
Great, thank you.
So the next standard that we're looking at is fiscal and asset management, and there are 5 strands within this category, within this standard. The first one is comprehensive and transparent budget, so it's around budgeting. And what we find is that there is a clear and detailed budget document that exists, and that it accurately accounts for all of the funding sources. We have begun to incorporate even more narratives in our budget, and I think that effort should continue to grow. I think that people, just like our students, people take in information differently, and some folks are really good at digesting numbers, and others like to see the story. So I think being able to provide more narrative, to tell the story, explain the different programs and cost centers and line items, and really link what we're investing to the outcomes that we're getting from that investment. The budget is also developed through a very participatory process, but I think that we have room to grow with respect to getting more stakeholder input specifically into what our budget priorities should be. And so opportunities include working to incorporate best practices for budget development into our document, ensure that we have narratives that tell the story of our budget and help the average person who's reading our budget to understand what it is our funding is going to, and to work to expand stakeholder involvement in the development of those budget priorities.
I think this was an area where, I think it was in the larger report, where they talked about school councils, and that we could utilize our school councils better if we included them in more than we do.
That's right.
They could be part of the publication of information and.
Yeah, there is a requirement, obviously, for school councils to exist, and one of their key roles is to advise and participate in the budget development process. So, making sure that we articulate what is a good procedure or practice to use in terms of getting their feedback around budget priorities for the district, for their schools.
Excellent. Yes. Any other comments on this? All right, thank you.
The next strand we have under this standard is adequate budget, and we find that the local appropriation has been sufficient to meet the educational needs of the district. Our per pupil spending is strong. It actually exceeds the state average by around $100 per pupil. We're at about $14,006. State average is about $14,005. However, I think that we do not necessarily regularly and systematically analyze how effectively we're spending each dollar, and I think that's something that is very important in terms of budget sustainability as we move in time. So I think developing a model or a methodology to analyze per unit expenditures at each of the buildings and program, that helps you get a benchmark on how effective and efficient the resources are being used. Analyze that regularly, and then benchmark expenses, not just between programs and schools, but even benchmark our expenses against other districts to find perhaps some districts that might be doing something that we could mirror or replicate here in this district to be able to offer programs more sustainably, more cost effectively.
Years ago, sorry, you go first, Mr. Bjork.
I was just going to say, I think it's tremendous that we're going to analyze our per unit expenditure broken down by each building and program. I was a little surprised actually to see that wasn't already in place. So I think that's great.
There was an effort at one point to put together some things that communities like maybe Tewksbury, North Andover, North Reading, Wilmington had to buy something, and they were going to do it together, but it never worked out. Somehow those things just never worked out.
There are some collaborative purchasing opportunities that we take advantage of. In food service, most notably, they participate in this Metro North collaborative where they all bid things out together, and they work collaboratively to develop the bid specifications, and then they go out to bid and they end up getting some good prices. We take advantage of the state contract, which obviously is a collaborative type bid environment. So it does happen. There are all sorts of different opportunities out there to be explored.
All right. Well, thank you. We all set? Thank you.
The next strand is cost-effective resource management. And we find that our administrators are certainly attentive to resource management and how they expend their resources. They're engaged whenever there is a discussion around prioritizing how we utilize our resources and how we budget our funding. We very effectively monitor and use entitlement grants that we're given through federal and state government. But we've had some limited success when it comes to competitive grants, so taking a look at that. Yeah. We have strong community partners that help us and assist us, including our Education Foundation School Business Partnership, as well as all our PACs. But I think we have some room to improve when it comes to leveraging our relationships and partnerships with colleges and universities, as well as area businesses, to support our schools and students. And not just financial support, but support around providing job shadowing, internship, school, career, different types of opportunities for kids to learn about career pathways and to begin to get some experience. So some opportunities in seeking to expand and formalize relationships with the area colleges and universities, building stronger relationships and more formalized programs with our local businesses, assisting our community partners, so the Education Foundation, the School Business Partnership, assist them in identifying some of the big picture goals that we have, which will help them to raise funding, because we'll be providing them with sort of a strong initiative or strong campaign to strong reason to lobby for, advocate for funding, which will hopefully enhance their fundraising abilities. And then finally, to consider engaging a grant consultant to assist in identifying and preparing competitive grant applications.
All right, Mrs. Burns?
I would love to have a grant writer for the district. I think it would be optimal. But I know in previous discussions, a year or two ago, and when I brought it up, that there wasn't enough out there that the grants that we were going at, we didn't either meet the criteria or we didn't have anybody to follow through and write potential grants. And then I think at one point it was stated that they had hired somebody several years ago, but it couldn't sustain, we weren't getting the grants to sustain the position.
Right.
So do you think by kind of working with our resources, there may be grant writers there who may assist us in acquiring I know there's a lot of funding that's been cut, so
Sure.
I'm not sure what's out
I
there.
am aware of and have worked with a couple of grant consultants who do exactly that. They're sort of they're not on retainer, you don't pay them, but they're looking out for grants, and when they see something that's related to whatever your district or school priorities are, get in touch with you and say, hey, we can write this grant, and then they get paid on a per grant basis.
Like success, or?
No, they get paid either way.
Oh, they're the ones writing the grant?
But they help, right, they
Okay.
facilitate the writing the grant, and they have strong knowledge of what it takes to write an effective grant, so they're able to craft the grant in a way that really helps you make the strongest case possible before whoever the grant funders are. So I've seen that work effectively. We do work, SEAM recently hired, the SEAM Collaborative hired a grant writer who we can access. The challenge there is that if there are multiple districts going for the same grant, then she obviously can't help. But if we have a grant that no one else is going for, we can tap into that resource as well. Some districts have even worked with, maybe collaborated to have a shared school-town grant resource person as well. So I think there's a lot of different opportunities that we can look at for that.
Okay, I think that would be something that could only be beneficial for us and the programs, initiatives that you'd like to put forth and we'd like to see succeed.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And two more strands. The next one is financial tracking, forecasting, controls, and audits. We're very fortunate to have Mr. Ruggiero, who is our resident guru and expert and does a fantastic job with financial controls and managing our funding. So we have very strong financial controls in place. Certainly the year-over-year, the fact that we return money to the town, I think demonstrates obviously that we have strong controls in place. And our staff are all highly qualified, our staff that are working in this area. Budget forecasts and reports are produced monthly for executive level review, and then the school committee is provided with those reports on a quarterly basis. State reports that we have to file are completed in a timely manner, satisfactory, and very few audit findings. We have procurement procedures in place that are compliant with state laws and regulations, although, again, it would behoove us to have formal written procedures in place. And the accounting system that we utilize, I think, could definitely be enhanced, and if you had a stronger system, could allow us to do financial tracking, forecasting, and reporting a little bit easier than what currently happens. I think that we could develop, in terms of opportunities, develop those written financial procedures to guide not only central office staff, but also administrators and building support staff as well, including around procurement procedures, making sure that everybody that's part of the financial team are appropriately licensed and certified, and working with the town to evaluate options for potentially updating, implementing, enhancing, or implementing a new financial accounting system.
Mr. Bier.
Is that something that would have to be done town-wide, or is that something the school would consider? Yeah, okay.
Yes, yeah. We're integrated, our systems are integrated.
Is the town interested?
I've had conversations with the assistant town manager, and I think that she recognizes that there are systems out there that may be more robust than what we have.
Okay. Mrs. Burns?
Just a quick question. How much time is currently spent on forecasting and monitoring the accounts because of the inability of the system to do so? Is it?
I guess I'd ask Paul that question. He's doing it it seems like he's doing it every day.
Yeah.
Constantly running reports and that. analyzing variances. It takes a little time to delve into some of the variances and what caused them.
I see. So can you give me like just an approximation?
You know, during a week, I might spend a equivalent of a day and a half to 2 days just kind of looking at numbers and making sure things seem okay, and then contacting various people to see what's going on or dealing with payroll and so forth.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
And the last strand under this standard, capital planning and facility maintenance. We find that our facilities are clean and well-maintained, but I think we're all aware that our infrastructure is aging, and it's in many ways does not really support the ideal learning environment. The exception, of course, we have great facilities at Wilmington High School, but Wilmington Middle School has also got great facilities. I think it's more the elementary and intermediate levels that we struggle with. There are certainly some untapped opportunities for improving energy efficiency in our buildings, and I know that this is something that public buildings is always looking at, but just to note that there are those opportunities. There is a preventative maintenance program in place, but I think that there probably just could be enhanced communication between the building administrator and the public buildings in terms of what's on that, what that program looks like, so that they can help and be another set of eyes and ears, if you will, to monitor the implementation of preventative maintenance measures. There is a comprehensive capital plan, as you know, that exists. Its scope is limited to 5 years. Typically, best practice, if you will, for capital planning is 10 years. And the capital plan sort of lacks a formal definition of what is a capital item and a rationale for how the capital requests are prioritized. And there's no sort of targeted funding goals established for what the annual capital appropriation will be. So I think in terms of opportunities, performing energy audits on buildings to identify those sort of high return investments that could be made to conserve energy, perhaps developing an energy management plan based on those audit results that really take us through what steps we will take over time to address energy conservation. Supporting the development of a facilities master plan, which I know is a high priority of the town manager, and he's got funding in his FY 2016 budget specifically for this, and that seems to be getting the support of the selectmen in the finance committee. That facilities master plan could obviously be used as the basis for future capital planning and capital investments. And then to expand the horizon for capital planning to 10 years, develop those definitions of what we mean by a capital item and a rationale for how we prioritize requests. For example, you know, high priority will be a life safety item, for example. Second priority might be it saves money, like energy conservation, and aesthetics obviously being lower on the priority list. And establishing annual funding targets. There's some communities, for example, that might say we will target, 5% of our annual revenues as a target goal or something along those lines. So I think having that funding target just helps for planning purposes.
Any questions on this matter, comments? Mrs. Gross?
And this will be a little entertainment. This is my ode to Robert Hayes. Did some research on some of this, and because I'm very interested in the infrastructure of our schools, especially with technology and the 21st century education. And some information I found is that from an article from the Globe from 2013 reported that Massachusetts schools have $4.3 billion in infrastructure funding needs, and that across the United States, it's actually $286 billion worth of funding needs in our schools. And 73% of public schools reported having undergone at least one major renovation in the United States. 28% of all public schools in the United States were built before 1950, and 45% were built between 1950 and 1969. So seeing where our architect has come to that, how public education has come, there's kind of an imbalance of the ability to grow along with the needs of educating our students. So that is always going to probably be a challenge in forefront, and I have to commend that the custodial staff with keeping up the integrity of these buildings. I'm an eclectic person to begin with, and I've always been very impressed with the high level of care that they've taken to our buildings, so that appearance-wise, they've sustained it and made it cheerful for especially our younger students in the district. But I just still think that those numbers are very high in this day and age to not invest. I'm just saying generally speaking, and something that we'll probably have to keep monitoring as we go further.
And interesting because people will say, well, school was built in, 1965, 1968. It doesn't seem old. Of course, approaching, a monumental birthday, I'm thinking, well, I'm old, so that's old. So.
One of the things someone said to me about the new high school was, what will we do about vandalism? And I would like to, trailing off what you just said, I think we need to recognize the students in this community, the children who have, we do not have a vandalism budget. We had one when I was on the school committee in 1989-90. There was a line item for vandalism.
Oh, really?
And since I've been on this last time, for all of these years, there is no vandalism budget. We have children who really respect what we're trying to do for them in the schools, and I think that says so much about our community. As we're doing this, I really...
Yeah, our kids are great. I mean, I see how they are, and Kate observed the same thing. We see how the kids are, particularly in the new high school. They're so incredibly respectful of that space, and it's like we've provided them with a professional, almost collegiate level environment, and they've risen to the occasion and really recognize what it is that they have and want to make sure that it's treated well. So I think that they're going to police each other and make sure that there's a high level of respect for what they have.
Yes. What do you think, Bill?
They'll be at the end by the door when they go into the gym for the dance to take off their shoes. They can collect them at the end.
Sock hops are fun.
Absolutely.
Those are great. All right, thank you so much. I just have one other little question. Now that we've done this with this part, I think we would all agree that these are all a priority. So I'm going to be curious, not for tonight, but maybe for our next meeting, you might give us a little insight into how you intend to take out of this and the next one and the next one?
Yep.
Right up for us, thank you. Okay. Excellent, that was great, thank you very much. All right, new business, SEAM Collaborative.
Yes, you have in your packet the SEAM Collaborative Quarterly Report. Under the new Education Collaborative regulations, the collaborators are supposed to provide member districts with a report on a quarterly basis. So what Kathy Lawson has done, she's the executive director of SEAM, is she provides to us the executive director's report that she provides to the SEAM board members. So you have January and February's representing part of that third quarter.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on that? Thank you. Our next item would be the personnel report.
Again, you have a memo in your packet, and you have a listing of the personnel changes that have occurred since our last report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Just a quick question. For the high school, the tech integrationist, is there an open,
So there was probably a little confusion. There was an open position, there was a position funded in the FY15 budget for a .4 technology integration specialist. That position was held open until the new building opened. So just prior to the opening, we actually posted for it. And Julie Kelly, who was formerly a music teacher at the middle school, she was also a tech integration specialist. She moved over to the high school. She's now full-time, and we have the rest of the FTE incorporated into the FY16 budget, so she remains a full-time tech integration specialist.
Okay. So her position at the middle school is not going to be filled? Or?
It is. It's actually open right now. Actually, they had a .8 teacher who shifted into the 1.0 position. They've posted a long-term sub position for the .8.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And the revolving account report?
And for that, I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Ruggiero.
Thank you. In front of you, excuse me, you have the revolving report as of March 2nd. I gave you a narrative, as I have most of the time when you receive this report. And as you can see, there continues to be a little bit of a mismatch. Revenues are lagging a little bit behind expenses being posted to the system. Revenues are entered in the system, but they're not posted until the town has reconciled all bank accounts. So there's a little delay there. The town's aware of it. We work with the town, and as we did last year and the year before, we'll continue to, at the end of the year, we make sure that we're all in sync, that revenues and expenses are posted at the end of the same month, if you will, by June 30th. And we should have no problem. The revolving accounts will all be in the black come June 30th. So.
As I've come to expect.
Did anyone have any questions? Yep, thank you, Paul. All right, here we are at public comment.
They're running away.
We're in the public comments leaving us. I paid her to do that. Thank you. Okay, our next item is other reports.
I'll just quick plug for the WEF, that they had their spelling bee last week. The bee raised $5,000.
Nice
So
job.
that's fabulous.
Nice job.
And I think everybody had a good time. I know I was happy with the Keurig I won at the raffles. Had a good time. The next step for them is they are looking at the Education Explorer grants and the technology grants. So stay tuned.
Okay, do we have, I would just like to comment that we are going to start a nurse negotiation, and Mr. Bjork and myself are going to be doing that. We start in March 23rd in the afternoon. Okay, so we'll know that. Correspondence? No correspondence, all right. Future meeting dates and agenda items, well, tomorrow, hopefully, if you get the opportunity to see the middle school principals. And then we have March 25th and April 8th. It's unbelievable it's coming so soon.
Where are we going to be March 25th?
We're hoping we'll be at the new Wilmington High School. Well, I know they're working hard on getting the, all the equipment into the control booth, so stay tuned, but that's the hope.
All right. And maybe we'll go a few minutes early if we are going to be there, just to have them explain. There's all kinds of things up in the ceiling for us to look at, and
all sorts of lights.
Lights and everything, yes.
Yeah, we won't turn them all on.
No, okay. That sounds good to me. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Bonish?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Mrs. Carroll?
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you very much for coming.